For those who don't know, this is James Spurgeon. James is our Global Growth Solutions Head and has worked at RM for a very, very long time. I won't even give that away because he looks about 15, but he's worked there about 80 years. And Sara Brewer, who is our Global Head of Partnerships. Sarah's been with us about 6 months. Excellent. Excellent. Good stuff. So again, all of us, let's interact, whether you're online, whether you're in the room here, let's interact with this session. It's designed very much to be collaborative, very much to start thinking about what's on your minds, what are you trying to achieve, what do you want to get out of AI, where do you want to start with AI? And for me, that's the leading question. Where do we want to start with it? But Richard, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself very briefly, first of all.
Yes. Thank you. Hello, I'm Richard Eckersley. I'm Head of Assessment at Institute for Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. I've been doing the role for over 10 years. I'm interested in AI, but I am not a tech advocate. I like cups of tea, I like the natural world. So I want technology to do the right thing. I want it to work well, but I'm not going to be jumping on it at the beginning. It needs to be functional, it needs to be effective. And I come back to one of those slides which captured it really nicely, which was saying, emphasize the most important qualities at a human level, always bring it back to the people who are involved in the process.
Excellent. All right.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sara Pierson from Oxford University Press. I'm Director Assessment and also Sales and Marketing globally for our English language teaching business. I'm not a technologist by background. I'm looking at this through a slightly different lens, which is how does this support the achievement of our mission and our goal as an education organisation, and how do we make sure that we're using the tools effectively to create the right kinds of learning experience and learning outcomes for our customers. Thank you.
Excellent. Matt.
Hello again. I'm still Matt. I'm still Matt Glanville. I'm a little bit of a sci-fi fan, and so I've seen all the wonderful opportunities that AI has brought in that genre without any of the problems, although I feel Mr. Asimov might have had a few good ideas about things. I've got two trends. One, I want to be able to use AI in assessment to get fairer, more valid, more meaningful, more engaging assessments. And then on the opposite side, I want to be able to use AI in the sort of production of assessments to do so quicker, better quality. Again, letting our experts spend the time on understanding the context of what we're trying to achieve the questions, not making sure that it's formatted correctly, that we've not got typos, and all the other things that destroy a good assessment.
Paul.
Morning, everybody. Paul Houghton from NEBOSH. I'm Director of IT Transformation. So I head up the team that is looking to kind of update and upgrade our platforms and systems internally. And I think we've got a special interest group, an AI special interest group at NEBOSH. It's only kind of in the early stages. It's been around for a while. But with, looking at sort of threats and opportunities, obviously, I think very similar, we've got a lot of kind of key people in NEBOSH that are kind of writing assessments on a day-to-day basis. It's a very niche role in health and safety, and it's quite hard sometimes to get the right people and have enough people. So, we're exploring AI to see how it can help us write those assessments. But, we need the key people to review and sort of look at that. But on the flip side, obviously with our practicals and our assessments, we're looking at how our learners may be using AI to kind of write their assessments, things, and how we can detect that kind of thing. And one of the key things that we're looking at the minute is sort of putting guidelines out there for our students and learners, because, like it was mentioned on the talk, as in, using a chatbot for inspiration, is that cheating? Is it not? We need to give people that kind of insight, sort of say, it's okay to do this, and we reference it. It's not okay to get them to write your 10,000 word essay.
Excellent. Okay, let's our expert panelists introduce themselves. I think you've done it already, Gráinne, haven't you? Yeah. Robert, let's go for it.
So, is my microphone working, or should I take this one?
Take that one, yeah.
Okay, thanks. So Robert Harrison's my name. You're going to hear from me later on because I'm going to be talking about the European Union's AI Act. So I do quite a lot of work in the legal side of artificial intelligence, and I'm looking forward to confusing everyone later on. Thank you.
Excellent. Tim?
Hello, my name's Tim Burnett. So I'm kind of uniquely placed in a position where I'm talking to a lot of awarding organisations, but also the technology providers, as I'm a consultant that floats around in the space. I'm a marketing consultant, so I'm using AI a lot in the work that I do there. I'm also a teacher. I teach 3 hours a week as a kind of an apprenticeship, so I'm using AI in the classroom. And I'm also then, kind of exploring the potential of AI with assessment. I'm one of those people that loves to play with these things and try these things out. So a huge techie.
Excellent. Over to Lynsey.
Hi there, good morning. Lynsey Meakin. I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Derby. We teach teachers, so this is a key area for us to be, and we're obviously training the people who are going to be teaching all of our little people. So I'm elated to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation.
No, our pleasure, our pleasure.
And I'm still Tom.
You're Tom, we know you. Excellent, okay. Is my mic working? Yeah, I'm all good, So I want to ask the customer panel, first of all. We've heard lots of interesting stuff today from Tom around, the benefits of AI and some of the caveats of using AI. From your perspective at the moment, what do you think are the most advantageous or maybe important areas that you would like to start seeing progress made in the assessment space or the education space for AI? Where do you think you'll get best benefit for the learner? Go on, Paul.
I'll kick it off. One of our challenges is marking, consistent marking.
Yep.
We've got multi-format, multi-language globally. We have resubmissions where we're having to kind of, remark certain exams, and getting the consistency through that is sometimes quite difficult. We've got a really good examination team. Just want to say that as in great. It's how can we use this new technology to kind of assist and help without taking away, a whole bunch of examiners that we work really closely with and that we kind of really respect and value.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And that does talk, Tom, to what you were talking about earlier, doesn't it? With it's not about removing the human marker, it's definitely about complementing it. Do Sara, Matt, Richard, you agree?
I was just going to add to that because my comment was kind of along similar lines in terms of thinking about marking and the benefits we can have. I think there is kind of an immediate level which has fewer regulatory issues and is probably quite achievable in the near term, where AI is able to augment marking, it's able to make suggestions about marking, it's able to help the human journey of marking without actually undertaking the marking itself. But I also think even if it's got the capability to do the marking itself and to do it at speed, even if we don't want it to do all of that, it could provide us a lot of assurance about what the human marking is. And it might be able to tell us weeks earlier the direction of travel of what is otherwise, an exercise that for ICAEW is taking many weeks. And we get to the end of it and we scratch our heads and go, is this the right outcome? We might know if it's the right outcome right at the start and then be able to start problem solving much, much earlier.
It's a really great shout.
Thanks. Perhaps just a bit of context in terms of Oxford University Press. Primarily, we're a publishing organisation, so we're about content and delivering that globally to support teachers, learners, academics to be more effective in the classroom. And we have got a small but very fast-growing assessment business, which we're very focused on and which we're integrating much more holistically with our learning materials to increase the effectiveness of our impact. We're very much at the beginning of our journey, I would say, on AI, and I think Tom's absolutely right. None of us really know what journey we're on or where we're going to land, but I think there's 3 buckets that we think about when we think about AI, and the first is efficiency, and we've talked about some of those areas here where efficiency, it can really support efficiency around marking, item generation, test banks, etc., and the management of that. And that's a kind of almost like a must-do for us in terms of thinking about where and how we gain those efficiencies to support our test taker journey. The second is around the customer experience. Where and how can we use AI to complement and supplement the learner's journey? And part of that is working with teachers to think about where and how does it make their job better, easier, how can they then use it in the classroom, but where also does it make it more fun for our learners? So, we deliver English language teaching materials, English language learning materials to kids who are very young, learning from home, whose parents don't necessarily have great English, and thinking about where AI can offer a fun way for those kids to really interact with the learning materials and gain benefit from it. And I think then the third area is around educational outcomes. Where and how does AI support that journey towards more effective learning of English? And how can the data and insights support the learner and the teacher to make sure that the educational use of AI is actually having a real world impact on their education?
Nice, thanks.
So AI is going to become more powerful over the next few years, without a doubt. And a lot of the stuff that's been talked about here, particularly in that marking space, I'm excited by, but I am waiting to see the evidence that it's really powerful now. Where I think we can be doing it right now is in using it as a tool to help teachers spend more time teaching. In those low-stake environments, in that personalisation of work and questions for students, all those situations where if it's not absolutely perfect, it's good enough, whereas within our space, the marking has to be absolutely perfect. I think that's the really important bit. The other flip side of that is within the IB, because of the nature of our assessments, we can't pre-test. We don't want to share the questions out. We've always had to use adults and teachers pretending to be students to test out. Can we actually use AI to be a better quality student than the adult pretending to be a student? Is that a direction of travel that we can learn from how they do? And then I think just finally, the point is there is a lot of conversation still about using AI to cheating. I just want to back the comments made earlier. We don't want that arms race between AI detection and AI generation. And also I want to re-empower teachers to understand their students' work. I feel a little bit with plagiarism, we outsourced it to technology. We can't do that with AI. So let's use this to get that better relationship with the teacher, knowing the student and having that relationship.
Excellent, thanks, Matt. I can see that Gráinne's itching to respond.
I think I was just itching, actually.
Okay. There's a cream for that.
What I'm really pleased about hearing is these are all of the things that we considered when we considered how we could effectively build a marking engine. We as a company have been here for 50 years for a reason, and that's that we look at what's coming over the horizon and we quite quickly get to something that we think is going to work for our end customers, who are ultimately the learners, but for everybody who goes along the journey with us. And particularly the point that you said, you'll see when I show it later, if I can figure out the clicker appropriately. And we do have another room where you can go in and look at it. What we've created could be used by a marker. It would mark first, and then your marker could look at every piece of feedback that has delivered and say, yes, we agree, and no, we don't. And the point is one that Tom has made earlier as well, and that was the core for us. This had to be additive. It wasn't a replacement, particularly when you're talking about summative assessment, which is your end final goal. The percentage of a mark matters. You have to have the ability to show why you've given that mark, particularly if it's accountancy and there's a mark between you're now an accountant and no, you're not. We have to be able to help you show that. And that's what the point of the marking engine was about. And we considered everything that we possibly could within that. And the whole point about collaboration was about the day was to see, are we where we want to be? And then to start working with you on POCs to keep training. Right. So that bit that Tom was talking about, we're not done yet. We have a lot of learning to do. And we are going to iterate continuously on that because it has to stand up. And I can't remember who made the point, I think it was you, Matt, about this will obviously end up in formative first. There's no way we're going to jump straight to summative. And summative is, for those of you who don't know, is when you get the final mark. So this would never end up in summative first. We will have to go back and we will have to use it on formative. But that's where we're going to learn a lot more as well. The bit that always worried me, and I mentioned this to somebody earlier, is we've all done exams, and when you go to school, there was always a student who was brilliant for 2 years, not on the day.
Me.
And there's a gap there And we haven't quite figured out what that gap is. If we can start earlier, informative, and showing people how this is going to be graded, not by a teacher that they know and love, who knows their little idiosyncrasies or the style with which they write something, but that level playing field that sits across and how things are marked, it will not only help all of us who are trying to get people things quicker, it will also help those learners on the end. And it will create a level playing field that we've gotten quite far away from, I feel, because that is very much dependent on who's teaching you, how good they are at doing that, how good you do on the day. If we can give people the building blocks earlier than that, it is not about cheating, it's allowing them to understand what arena they're going to enter into and how all of those bits fit together. So that's where we were coming from.
Beautiful. Thank you, Gráinne. I guess another question I've got, and Lynsey, this is coming your way, just to give you a little warning. I think what we've talked about is in classroom is probably quite an active area for where AI is going to have its most immediate benefit to the learner and to the teacher. What are your thoughts about how we promote that and how we support and help teachers embrace the technology? Because I think working in a technology organisation and working in this space now for many years, I can see sometimes, very often, it's not the student that resists some of the technology, it's more the teacher, and that's a fear factor. And I relate to that, I get that, but how do we support and help them? And what are your thoughts, what are your views on that?
Thank you. We are in the process of actively encouraging all of our beginning teachers, so all of our trainee teachers, to embrace the use of certainly generative AI. It's a time saver, it's a resource, it's a tool. So we compare it to the calculator was feared at the time. People are like, oh, nobody's going to have to learn how to do maths anymore.
Of course,
That's not the case at all. But it's a tool, it's a
right,
resource.
right,
The same is true of generative AI. It's a time saver, it's a resource. What we're trying to emphasize to students is the need to use it ethically, to use it transparently, and to use it wisely, and to be very aware that all of their students are using it. Generation Alpha are digital natives. They don't know a world without the internet, without their own devices. Primary school children already have mobile phones. So they are very, very familiar with digital platforms. And generative AI has now been embedded into those. So as was pointed out, people are using generative AI often without even realizing it. It's not deliberate. So like the point was made, well, I used Edge, I used Bing. Was that cheating? And it's not. And we need to instill that. We need to encourage the use of these resources, but as resources. There are concerns that long gone is the day of asking students to prepare a written piece as an assessment, because generative AI could just do it for you. So assessment is very important, and how we assess learning, but that's the key. What we want to do is assess human learning. Has learning taken place? I love the comments about being interactive in English and the teaching of English platforms. These are gamers. They're used to gaming, they're used to trying things 100 times, and that's one of the benefits of generative AI. It doesn't get tired, it doesn't get bored. You can ask it the same question 100 times and it will answer you tirelessly, seamlessly at any time of the day. These are the opportunities that generative AI brings, and this is what we try and instill in teachers so that they go into a classroom more confidently.
Okay, that's great. Great response, thank you.
Thank you.
I guess back to our customer panels. Some of what Gráinne will reveal later is, and you touched on it, Sara, is efficiency is something that you and we all want to see as a benefit from AI, right? It's not something we should be embarrassed about. It's something we should embrace, because it's going to support and enhance that education and assessment experience as we look forward. We, I think, have been quite shocked by the levels of efficiency that you can see from the POC that we've done. How do you think that will be perceived within your world, and how do you think we as RM can support you with that, and indeed how you will need to support your own organisations with that?
I think it's a really good question, and that idea about perception is really important. It picks up on what Lynsey said as well around teachers. They're all really excited and interested in this, and we work with teachers around the world. We hold conferences for them, we survey them, we want to understand what they're doing today in terms of using AI in the classroom, but also what their fears and hopes are for how it's going to change things going forward. And I think what we see is quite a lot of confusion out there, really. They want to try it out, but they don't know whether they can trust it, and they don't know who they can work with to help them to facilitate the use of AI in the classroom. So I think that notion around trust is really important when we're talking about perceptions. And for us as an organisation, we have to protect our relationship with educators around the world. We want that trust to be upheld. They know that our standards are high. They know that they can trust us when they're working with us on learning and assessment initiatives. But I think then the question is around how we maintain that over time in a world that's changing, and what we do around, if you like, business as usual, the kinds of things that they expect from us on a day-to-day basis, and where and how we retain space for experimentation. So that we're trying different things, we're doing things in a sort of more low-stakes environment that allow us to use the technology in different ways and explore how it can provide powerful solutions for teachers, learners, and ourselves as an institution in terms of efficiency.
So I'm going to be a little bit of a doom bringer here. I think we have got decades before the general populace will have the same level of confidence in a AI marker that they do in a human marker. Yeah. So I think we're going to be using it absolutely to support, absolutely to speed up, second checking, what's everything else. But I think as educationists, we'll have to keep that human in the loop for a long while. Part of the reason I have that is because I lived through the COVID years, and I know that the expectation, particularly in the UK, with the evil algorithm that mathematically I could show was remarkably effective, but that fell apart with the gut instinct that a human being has to be making these key decisions. So that's why I think we must push on with this, but we also must be realistic with where first teachers and then the general public will be.
Yeah, makes sense.
I would probably strike a positive tone on the same point, actually, which is that, you know, if we talk about high levels of efficiency and marking, it brings to mind those people we work with who are undertaking the marking work. And if you said to them in 5 years, and I don't think this will happen, but in 5 years, AI will be doing all the marking. Well, these are the people we work with. These are the humans, so let's come back to them. But actually, I think the reassuring point to them is, firstly, it's not going to happen that fast. And secondly, what we're going to aim to do is to gradually improve and human focus on that 1%, on the point that matters, the cut score. Let's let AI put all our energy into that, all our human decision-making into that more and more, and that will gradually send us in a direction. But no, I completely agree. It's not going to be a sudden next year everyone will be doing, mass-scale AI marking.
No, absolutely. Yeah, do.
Okay.
No, it's not. You'd have to come up here with me.
As an educator and an educator of educators, I feel it is absolutely vital that we mark students' work. Okay, so I'm glad that your feeling is in 5 years it won't be all marked by AI, because it's not about fearing for my job. It's if we expect our students to dedicate their time to providing an assessment, they are entitled to have a human being look at that assessment. That's my biggest problem with AI doing the marking. We do, however, have issues with, well, that teacher really likes me, I want them to mark my work, which is why we have rubrics. So there are standardised rubrics. What we are finding AI to be very, very useful for is we will mark an assignment, we will mark the piece of work, we will have a feeling for where we think it should be graded. The rubrics are weighted. If we then ask AI, simply putting in where we would put it along the rubric, it will tell us what percentage score that piece of work has. We can then decide if that's where we thought it was, but it's supported, it's backed up by the AI and the rubrics, the algorithm, because marking is a very personal thing. But I think marking needs to stay a very personal thing.
Agreed. Okay, we have an online question that I can see on the screen here. James, do you want to read that one out?
Finally, I get to use my voice.
You do, even though it's croaky.
Yes. How should we treat the use of AI in school-based assessment? In essence, what are some of the strategies to ensuring the authenticity of students' work while not altogether avoiding the use of AI?
That's definitely in our experts zone down here. You can pick whoever you want to go to. Tom?
Yeah, Tom.
Yeah, I'm going to start on it's a very difficult one because AI detection not only doesn't work, it's biased in ways we would not wish it to be against, for example, non-native English speakers. And so I think if we say we cannot have a kind of arms race, then we immediately have to look towards the kind of codes of conduct and practice that are being devised and implemented in schools and universities across the world. And one very basic thing is that the people drawing up these codes of practice at the coalface need to talk to one another, need to co-design and talk about what works. We need to find ways for people to reference how they've used AI. We need to have assignments that celebrate the use of it as a research tool, as a tool for deepening thinking, but also then that celebrate human contributions and demonstrate how we go above and beyond it. And again, I love this word iteration because it gets me off having to give definitive answers. but I think we have to accept that, we're not going to come up with one set of standards that are set in stone.
Sure.
And we need to find a way. Another thing I hear a lot is people talking about the process of questioning the AI itself becoming part of the assessment. And so, what does a good, rich, collaborative process of getting the most out of AI look like? And I can imagine assessments where you talk about how you've used technology, which AIs you've used, how you've revised and updated your assumptions, how you've used them to prompt reflection, and then what you've done above and beyond that. But I think it's a team sport, and I would very strongly encourage those involved in this to just look at what's being done by different institutions around the place and what's gaining traction.
Makes sense. Gráinne?
Thank you. So IBM about 10 years ago came up with a new term. So where we had white collar and blue collar, they came up with new collar. And what that meant was it was always going to be a mix of tech and normalized learning that we would all be used to. And we now have to teach students how to be new collar workers because that's what they're going into.
Yeah, you're right.
You are never going to lose the human in the loop, never. I wouldn't want something purely marked by AI. What it will do, though, is it'll do exactly as you said it will. It will provide a level base, and that will help whoever that human is making that decision. But the core here is not replacement. It is a way to make both of those things work intricately together, which is why I thought IBM did really well with. Used to work at IBM.
Okay.
New collar was a perfect term for that because it really did encapsulate. It's not going to be all one thing or all something else. Where we're going is an additive, adaptive place, and that means that everybody has to have the ability to dip in and do bits and pieces. But there's never going to be a replacement. And what we're doing here will filter into classrooms. It will filter into people teaching teachers. And we actually have a responsibility to help with that because it isn't just about the assessment, it's about teaching them to not only pass an assessment, but to be somewhat useful when they actually end up in the world of work. I'm going to go with somewhat useful there. Not full utility, but it's a long process that we're on, and we all form a part of that, from professional organisations right down to the beginning.
Yeah, great. Go for it, Sara. Oh.
Yes, so I'd like to come in here slightly differently. As I said, I am a lawyer. I did work for IBM, so but it's not so much. I'm not representing IBM here, just to make this absolutely quite clear. But I think it's very interesting, as Tom said, is that it's about drawing up codes of practice here, because one of the other things I think we also need to acknowledge is that codes of practices, in essence, become legal tools at the end of the day, and we often call it a source of law, even though they've often been drawn up not by Parliament or not by the civil service, but they've been drawn up by individuals. They've been drawn up by companies in here. And they often offer the opportunity to challenge results, for example. So just going back to here, what we need to actually understand as well when we're drawing up these code of practices, how should we be detecting AI-inspired work in there? How do we challenge a student who might have done used AI, genuinely using Bing, using Google, or have they basically said to ChatGPT or to Gemini, produce me a 10,000-word essay on Jane Eyre or something along those lines with the following question. And it's really, really difficult to do that. And I know it because I've played around with one of my kids' questions recently with ChatGPT and produced a very good essay, it has to be said. So I think, you know, it's also working out how and when you should be challenging it. I'm just trying to remember, there is a case in the UK at present, I think it's from the Open University, where actually somebody is challenging the results because the marker has said that they think it's AI generated this essay.
Yeah.
And the student maintains that it is not AI generated this essay, and there's no clear rules and regulations in the Open University, if it is the Open University, to do that, because I looked at the Open University recently on that one. And so I think that's one of the other areas that we really are going to actually have to start thinking about within the community, is not just tools on, you know, when you can actually use AI, but what tools are you going to be able to use to detect misuse, abuse of artificial intelligence? Because if we don't get that right, we are starting to have to start challenging, obviously, internal challenges. Sometimes they even end up in court systems, as we all know.
Yeah, indeed.
To follow up on that, thank you. I agree with Tom. I don't think we need to get into a race between this is the better AI, this is the better AI detector, but we perhaps need to take it up to an institutional level, right in the codes of practice. If we instill in our students how to absolutely use AI, but to use it properly and to use it transparently, and to follow the institutional codes of practice, as an institution we take responsibility, we encourage you to use AI, but this is how we'd like you to use it. It's not about plagiarism, it's not about fault finding, it's not about accusations, it's about creating those codes of practice in the first place that say, yes, absolutely, we want you to use AI. As an institution, we'll take responsibility for that, and we're now going to guide you on how to do it properly. That's what it's about.
Great. Go for it, Tim.
Thanks. So I've been quietly listening and reflecting on what everyone's been said. I think one of the challenges we've got at the moment is we ran a workshop yesterday with the Assessment Association with AOs, looking and thinking about AI there, and it was very productive. And we're still, though, in a situation where everyone's thinking about how we use the technology for existing almost 20th century problems. And Tom kind of alluded to it that, yeah, there are challenges with AI at the moment. It's the ability to understand the physical world, but that's changing. And AGI is on the horizon, and we are not in control of how society is going to adopt AI. We saw that the other week with DeepSeek downloads. We are not in control. All we can do is help, influence, and try and prevent a sudden drop in humanity in its abilities. So my kind of advice and thinking to people is, yes, have 3 teams within your organisation. Have a red team that's looking at the current integrity challenges that you have and those cheating things. Don't get in an arms race. You're not gonna get anywhere with that. Have a green team that looks at solving some challenges now with the technology. How can we embrace it now? Whether it's item generation, marketing, those kind of things. Have that idea, but have a blue team as well. Have someone who's looking at that horizon as to, okay, let's look at the jobs and roles within our domains. And this is the other thing I want to mention is that, at the moment we're all using the kind of general language models that are available, and the knowledge that's been trained on the internet's great from data, etc. All the awarding organisations present here are experts in their domain. They need to work and build on top of these models to add their knowledge within that space. Correct. And I think the whole thing needs to be flipped. You need to flip your view and approach to assessment. Don't look at how you're using assessment now and how AI can adopt it. Completely turn it on its head. Don't ask the student to answer questions, ask them to look and reason and apply those metacognitive skills, etc., all around it, and apply more weight to the thinking process than the actual outcome process. I just want to pick up on very quickly Matt's kind of sci-fi kind of space. At the moment, we've been living in impulse. we've now been accelerated to warp 1, warp 2. It's just over the horizon. We're going to be at warp 9 very soon. So we
you
need
just
to
made him a very happy man.
we need to really start thinking of this.
Thanks, Jim. That's super interesting. Are there any questions in the room? I'm conscious that we've got 5 minutes left. The hour has gone very quickly, but Matt, go for it.
Hi, Matt Wingfield. So just picking a bit up on what Tim was saying, I think, and it's a question for the customer panel. I wonder whether we've talked a lot today about how AI can help make marking more efficient and that kind of stuff. And to me, that's great, but it's also a bit boring. And actually, where the interest for me lies is, and again, picking up on what Tim was saying and the conversations we had with the AOs yesterday at the EAA's workshop, is this a prompt for us to think about redesigning assessment? We talk about work readiness, and I think a lot of our existing assessments don't really help with the modern student trying to get ready for work. Is AI giving us the opportunity to say, right, actually, we need to rethink assessment, we need to be more inclusive of how people are generating knowledge, because there are lots of ways of generating knowledge, and Google's been around a long time and been doing that, very well. But actually, it's about understanding the authenticity of the knowledge and how they then apply that knowledge into context within the assessments. Any thoughts from the panel on that?
So perhaps a couple of thoughts. One from a personal reflection. My son's studying a science degree at university at the moment, and one of the assessments that was designed for him to consider was an essay written by AI. Please go away and critically appraise it and come back with your view on what AI has done well in terms of its assessment of the question and what it's done badly. He found it really, really difficult to do. And I think that's a very interesting thing to think about in terms of how we are designing questions in the right way to be able to test the kinds of skills that learners are going to need to deploy in an AI world in future. It's a fairly superficial example, but I think it sort of shows the sort of mindset that we're all going to have, as we're going to have to adopt as we're thinking about assessment design for the future. From a more kind of practical perspective in terms of English language learning, we know that there are certain things that learners find more difficult. So speaking is a particular one where you can speak it in a theoretical environment, but actually applying spoken English in a real world setting can be a challenge. Nervousness comes in, confidence impacts, the context changes, the real world use of English is sometimes different from how we design it as an English language assessment organisation. But AI provides a real opportunity for us to think about how we can create, through the use of AI and VR, etc., a real world environment for learners to interact with and speak in and be assessed on without some of the pressures that might exist in a human-to-human interaction.
That's right, yeah.
So, those are the kinds of areas where I think AI and new technologies can play a real role in facilitating the learning process, changing the way in which we assess, and allowing us to get new insights into the real capabilities of learners.
Hi, Matt. Fundamentally, I think we should have been looking at these higher order skills anyway, because Google's been around for a long time and knowledge recall has been dying for a long time. So we've been gradually pushing within the IB to get to that space. You're absolutely right. I think particularly once we get into digital assessments alongside, we can do the interactive stuff, we can do adaptive assessments in the way we've never been able to before, but also we can give them those AI tools so they can use it during the assessment process. So we don't even need to say, tell us how you did it. It could be, show us how we did it. So you're absolutely right. For me, I think it's that digitalization that opens up far more the options, but AI is part of that because it means there's that interactivity as part of it. And that's what's important. Paper's very boring.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions before we head into a break? Yes, Andrew. They were fighting over the microphone to give you there, weren't they?
Great, thanks very much. Andrew Nye from Oxford University Press. I just wanted to raise the topic of diversity. So as Tom was saying in his talk, the AI, it knows the data, but it doesn't know the world behind it. And it over-represents a particular view of the world, which is Western, it's educated, it's probably male. And that's kind of how it is at the moment, but how do we correct for that is basically my question.
Good question, really good. Yay! Tom.
Well, I don't think I should speak now.
Yeah.
I'll just mansplain this one.
So, Gráinne will correct you.
It's such an important point. And I guess three little observations. One is knowing about bias is very powerful because you can do something about it. And it can be a good thing to recognize the ways in which data is deficient. But that's just the start. The second is absolutely a diversity of representation in terms of the people organizing and testing systems. Because often you will only spot something has blind spots if you have someone who is less blind to those spots. But the third is that I think there's diversity of models in the future. One of the big things about DeepSeek, R3 and so on is that these are hyper-powerful open source models. I've worked with people like the National Library of Norway who have digitized pretty much all of Norwegian culture. There's not a lot of it, so that's a good starting point. But you can create diverse sources of data that embody language and culture, domain-specific knowledge. And I think the more you can, in principle, diversify models, understand their strengths and advantages and limitations, and have multiple models. Again, you have kind of teams of rivals, so to speak. You can use a combination of these approaches to try and seal off blind spots. But it all begins by trying to recognize there are blind spots, find out what those blind spots are, and have a kind of ethical mitigation strategy rolling with you.
Makes sense. Gráinne?
I have one example I was going to talk about later, which I will bring up again, so everybody look really interested for the second time. Later, please. But when we first started marking, what we found was that AI really harshly marked anything that was spelt wrong in a way that a human wasn't, because a human had more information. So a human was saying, is there dyslexia here? Is there dyspraxia here? The AI hated it, and we had to work on the benchmarking of that to make sure that it understood that as long as it was understandable, it didn't matter. So we saw almost immediately big blind spot that we weren't expecting to see, and that was in and around marking. And I would echo just what you said, but I thought it was a good example that we came up with in this seeing, because we weren't expecting that to be a problem. And it did not like the misspelling, and we had to completely change the model and continue to teach it using that many-shot model. It could be this, it could be that, it could be the other thing. So you can train bias out. It's really important that we know that, but to your point, it's about spotting that and then doing that training to get it out.
I was just going to add, it's a particular issue when you're working with multiple countries, multiple backgrounds, multiple cultures, multiple education contexts. And that is a challenge for us in thinking about how we design for those different attributes without wanting to stereotype, there are different attributes in terms of how people learn. So we need to take that very seriously as we're thinking about the learning design process.
I'm going to be really naughty and ask, how are you doing that? Because you're the provider of a lot of textbooks in the system at the moment. So how are you in existence trying to make sure that it's inclusive? It's not, because fundamentally artificial intelligence is only dragging from an existing body of information. So if we make that body of information fairer, more equal, then the AI will automatically pick it up. So in some sense, it's not an AI problem, it's a body of evidence. However, good ethical point, how do we then avoid having different types of AI that have been trained on different ideologically established bodies of work? And that's something that keeps me awake at night.
Absolutely. Any other questions in the room? There was one online, so James can read that one out while you're all preparing your questions in here. Oh, we've got another one down here. Sarah. Go for it. Yeah. Go for it.
Hi, I'm Astrid. I work for Education Development Trust in Teacher Professional Development. And it really picks up on something in Tom's keynote, which was he talked a little bit about the potential of AI de-skilling people possibly over time, and the relationship then with something else that was spoken about, which is human domain expertise, and that we rely on human domain expertise to make sure that the AI isn't making mistakes. So kind of over time, how does the relationship between those things potentially cause risks that we need to be aware of, and how do we safeguard against those things?
Good question.
Yeah, so there's some interesting recent papers on both sides of this divide, and I think the nutshell is to be very careful about what aspects of learning and working you offload to AI and what you don't. And what you want to avoid is offloading the process of kind of thinking and experimenting and reflecting. The good news is that kind of AI systems can be absolutely fantastic at prompting people to correct. But what you don't want is them to be kind of auto-completing every thought. There was a recent study that looked at critical thinking in AI, and the sort of headline was, performance improved while you were using it, but degraded after you weren't using it. So I think it comes back to keeping people in the loops. The other really key thing for me is just that an AI is always only one part of a larger system. With an organization, with an education system, you have to think about where this wonderful tool fits into human discussions, into oversight, into debate, how it can free up more time for oracy, for human feedback, for group work, for this other stuff. So if you treat it as the magical solution box that means you don't have to think or work anymore, that's a problem. If you treat it as the kind of magical facilitator that maybe allows you to increase the time and attention you spend in these other areas, lifting people up, then I think you're in a much more robust terrain.
Yeah, makes sense. Go for it, Sarah, yeah.
My name is Fraser, I work at the IB. I just want to pick up on Tim's point about horizon scanning and how do we as a community be proactive rather than reactive, and is it an opportunity for us to engage with the tech providers so that we're aware in advance of what's coming? So DeepSeek came out of nowhere, the reasoning models that are on the market now. How are we not behind the curve? How are we kind of riding that crest of the wave to understand what opportunities are there for us in the future and what challenges are there for us in the future?
So I think that one of the first steps is the fact that you're all here and we're having this conversation is an excellent starting point. There are a number of sources that you can listen to, engage with, and connect and draw information from those to try and understand. It's very hard to crystal ball it, isn't it? The kind of what the actual ultimate future will look like. But DeepSeek, yes, that was a surprise. But the idea that China would release something that would take an exponential step in a way, it wasn't really a surprise in some ways. So I think we just need to continue to have these conversations. That's why kind of, organizations like the E-Assessment Association, people like that, we're always trying to kind of have and discuss and explore this. And you're quite lucky in the fact that you've got one current and two former chairs here as well. So please do come and chat with us there. We need to also look beyond our industry assessment. And something I do quite frequently. I listen to a lot of the Sam Altman podcasts, and there's some amazing resources out there. And I can share if anyone wants. I'm collecting a whole range of resources together, and you need to just interrogate and look against that and ask questions against those resources and just follow the pulse of what's happening and changing. Nobody has the answer. I'd be driving around in Bentley if I knew the future. But I've got a Skoda Octavia. All we can do is just look, talk, discuss, and explore, and don't be afraid to kind of join up with the other organisations. Don't keep it to yourselves because everyone else is thinking about these things. So you need to work together as a community going forward.
Great shout. Nothing wrong with the Skoda, Tim, either. Nothing wrong with the Skoda. No. All good. James, we have another online question. Do you want to use your news reading voice?
We do. The last question was from James Young, and so is this one, and he's really testing my ability to read the auto cues. Excuse me as I try this one. In the context of AI integration into educational technology and pedagogy, if I pronounce that correctly, I'm concerned that AI is often used as an encompassing term, potentially overshadowing its specific and targeted applications. For instance, AI-enhanced interactive learning tools, assessment preparation, marking and analysis and insights each have unique functionalities and benefits. What are your thoughts on this, and how can we ensure that these specific uses are recognised and effectively used? Anyone like to pick that up?
Who's going to be brave enough? Go on, Gráinne.
So you remember to one of the 3 questions that I asked you all about at the beginning of the day was what are your outcomes here? What exactly is it you're trying to get to? And that's when you have that answer, then you start to look back at the tooling, right? And then it becomes clearer. What are our focuses going to be and why? So if it is learning, and I keep pointing at you, Max, you talked about it, as did Sara. If it's going to be how do we help people learn more effectively, then you start to train those models in a way that works for you. And you also mentioned that about training your own. Right. That's what we've done for marking, because our experience in RM assessment is around helping people mark. And we've seen all the pitfalls that come around that. That's where our human knowledge is great, plus our technology. But it has to be about, we can't focus on everything. So we have to define what our focus is going to be and then put our eggs in those baskets. And that should be 1 to 3 things, not 12. Because a focus on 12 is a focus on none. So it's about understanding primarily what it is that you want for your outcome and then working collaboratively in order to get there. It's quite a political answer, as in a politician.
I'll give it a go as well. So I think, we're at an early stage of all of this, and we haven't quite categorised yet where AI has benefits, where it doesn't have benefits, what the specific uses are in specific use cases. So from my perspective, I think it's about having that ongoing conversation. We talked quite a lot today about the need for collaboration across the sector, and unfortunately, often we're competing and we're not collaborating. I think in this field specifically, we're going to have to collaborate more to look at those specific cases, look at the benefits, work out where and how we use them to best effect. And it's an evolving story, right?
No, 100% agree with you, Sara. I think from our perspective as well, that really resonates well. And the reason why we've embarked on some proof of concepts is to start that journey. It's not going to answer it in its entirety. It's going to pose more questions than it is answer them in the beginning. But I think it's going to be an evolving journey that we all go on together. And I think it is going to be about collaborating. It is going to be about sharing and learning. And then it is going to be about delivering the right outcomes as a result at the right points in time. For me, one of the interesting elements of this is how feedback can be used as an intervention tool as well. And that's definitely something I'd like to ask you guys in particular about is, for me, I see that as a huge positive, and from, again, I'm trying not to jump into your slot too soon, but from a feedback perspective, Gráinne and I have talked about it at length, and see this as a real game changer, really, in the assessment and the education space moving forward. It does talk to, Lynsey, what you were talking about with making sure that teachers feel empowered and don't feel afraid of the AI journey and what it can offer and what it can implement. But what are your thoughts on feedback and intervention and how AI is going to support on that journey?
Very quickly, yes, please, let's do it. It's great. Also, let's think about the speed at which AI can provide feedback. I go back to being a classroom teacher with 33 kids in an hour-long lesson. That ability to get the quick, easy feedback done to the students and then being able to spend my time where I needed to. The other bit I will just add is that artificial intelligence feedback is easier for the student to disagree with. Whereas if I'm going to argue with my teacher, there's a whole power balance there. And that encourages students to be critical receivers of feedback and think about it rather just taking it as the absolute truth and acting accordingly. So it's a win-win.
I go back to what I said at the beginning, really. It's about customer experience and customer benefit, and it's about education outcomes. And I think feedback and being able to give really quick, timely feedback that enables teachers to gain new insights into what next for their learner, but also for the learner themselves to challenge themselves, think about what's next, is really, really important. It's obviously one of the areas that we think is going to have massive potential in terms of learning and assessment.
Great.
I think there's an element of being really clear-sighted about where you're trying to achieve something. So coming back to you can't do everything. I was listening to Radio 4 on the way up when I was driving here, and it was a sort of PR podcast, which is not at all what I would normally be listening to. But what they were describing was a situation where PR professionals would come into a company, and the job of the people who were being paid, i.e. the PR people, was to tell the company what their purpose was and what they were meant to do. And if we apply that to this situation, if we think about bringing AI into summative assessment, if that's the focus, probably wait until it's doing really good hard lifting for formative assessment, for feedback, because then you can learn all of those lessons and bring them into summative assessment, which is pretty much what everybody's doing with most new things that come into this space. So follow that same logic. You know, AI, as we've said, it's new, but it's also just another tool, another part of technology. So let's treat it that way as well.
To put simply, our learners crave it. They really want it. We struggle to provide it. So any help that we can get to help the people is really needed.
I think that's what we've all got to draw in our minds, isn't it? It's about what they want to receive and when they need to receive it. I was that student that Gráinne talked about earlier, was very, very good in the classroom, but hopeless in an exam hall. And that, getting that feedback at the right point in times, I think would have been a confidence booster and taken away that battle I had in my own mind about sitting examination. So I think it really will add to that. So following on from that, we do have another online question, but I can't resist myself asking you another one, if I'm being really honest about it, is, over the next 12 to 18 months to 2 years, what do you, as leading organisations in the assessment space, want to see coming from AI? What is going to benefit you the most? If we are working and collaborating together on your priorities, what would those priorities look like for you? That's a very thought-provoking question.
And you don't have to answer it now.
No, it's one you can come back to.
But I think in 1 to 2 years, I think we're probably not in the position of using AI in anger a lot.
Yep.
We're probably still dealing with, some of the threats and thinking about the opportunities. And my boss is here today, and he's said recently, if you think about the challenges we have as an organisation, we're doing loads of other stuff that isn't this. We haven't got a team of people sitting around who can suddenly bring in a whole load of new ideas. So if we think about where we are now, 1 year, 2 years away, that's really soon. You'll have to throw something else away if you want to undertake a big investment of this, or you'll have to add it on. So yeah, my inclination would be to say, knowing what the roadmap is, maybe being in the state of going, here's where we're going, but I'm not sure using it in anger is that likely that quickly. I think we imagine things being faster than they are in practice. Think about self-driving cars. You could rewind a few years and there'll be endless news articles saying in whatever amount of time, by now, everybody's car will be being driven for them. Not sure if anybody came here in a self-driving car, but I certainly didn't.
I think it's really hard to say at the moment. I think to slightly give the opposite view, I think the use of AI in the classroom and by learners is unpredictable. And although I think we all like to think that it'll follow a predictable path and we know what we need to design and when we need to design it, things are just around the corner, right? And they could disrupt us quite rapidly. Yeah. So I get it. I think you're right to take a cautious approach, and we need to make sure that we're doing things in a secure way where we can have confidence that our learners are protected, that our assessments remain secure, reliable, trusted, etc. But on the other hand, things could change quite rapidly without our knowledge, consent, participation. So we're going to have to think about how we do both. How do we integrate things like AI marking? It's got to be, it's a must-have, in my view. But also feedback, I think that's a really critical one where it adds a massive customer benefit. Yeah. But then, where are those unpredictable areas that we need to think about and design for, so that we're not taken by surprise when something different happens or unexpected happens in the real world?
Great shout.
I think we need to look at it sort of across the business, as in how is it going to enhance, our processes and how we interact with our customers. But I think the change element within our business is in the people, is in how can we bring them on the journey. People don't like change in general. So we're going to improve people's jobs by, using AI, but what does it actually mean to them? So I think that's, we're talking about assessments, but I think it's across the whole business that we've really got to look at this and make sure that people aren't scared of it and they're going to lose their jobs. How is it going to kind of improve their day?
I think just carrying on from that, we're already using it in that sort of chat bot for our resources to let people find the answers that they want and be able to prioritise the human telephone folks spending more time on the complex ones. So that's already there. I guess the little product I'd really like to see is something affordable and safe for the school context, because we've got to start with formative. We've got to get our young people understanding the right way, the ethical way, the safe way to use AI, and that involves letting teachers get their hands on it and use it in the right context. So there's the challenge for you.
Totally agree. Yeah, totally agree. Super. Okay, we've got one more question. It's online, and then we'll head into a break.
Cool. So short and sweet one. How and where do we draw the line in the use of AI in either academic or professional assessments?
That's a huge question. Go on, Lynsey. Thank you.
Perkins et al. Published an AIAS in 2023. It's an AI assessment scale that ranges from absolutely no AI use in the assessment all the way through to full integration of AI use, so that kind of generativism, that human and AI co-collaboration of assessment work. Really, really effective table. It's also been worked on and improved and added to across different genres by different educators in primary, secondary, FE, and for different purposes. It's also been used for English as additional language learners. So as well with having a look at, I think, could answer many of the questions. So the AI assessment scale is an effective way to consider where the line might be drawn.
Makes sense. Tim?
I think the challenge there is the line's moving all the time.
It is.
So you just can't, like I say, we're not in control of this and how society and business will adopt this. So you just need to be so connected to your community and keeping pace with them. And I just want to throw in one other kind of word of caution, really, I suppose. The pandemic wasn't so long ago, and the sudden rush to online proctoring that went through and the mistakes that people made as part of that from the people who had not started trying and playing with these technologies. And I think what's so unique about AI is that there's some incredible tools out there that enable you experts in the room. You don't need technologists. You don't necessarily need organisations who are the IT organisations to develop these things for you. You can start to experiment with these things yourself. You can explore it and prototype. And yes, you'll need it. You'll need RM to help you productize that solution. But you just need to be testing these things out, and you need to start seeding some of these new ideas into your existing assessment practices, with making sure things are valid, reliable. Do not impact the learner in that, but you do need to start finding ways in which you could embrace this technology now.
Indeed. Gráinne, anything from you? Come on. Okay.
Be very pithy. I think you do it via mutual consent. You agree, to Rob's point from earlier, a code of practice, that you'll both stick to. And that forms the basis for ongoing conversations about where these boundaries should lie, what innovation looks like. But I think that's the way to do it. I think, but it's the mutual consent, I think, that's important, because otherwise you get into these various arms races and then you shut down innovation, because then, crucially, mutually you can agree to adapt it, to expand it, to extend it, and to enforce it when needed as well.
Going to end with you.
Well, the one thing I'm going to say is you also will have a gut feel of where the line is. So the line might be moving.
There you go. Yeah.
But if I'm Sara, somebody needs to be able to speak English, right? They need to be able to write it to a certain level. They need to be able to speak it to a certain level. If I'm Paul, I need to be really confident that somebody knows what the health and safety rules are without looking at anything. So there is a line that we still have.
Yeah.
Our approach to how we get people to that level of understanding is the line that is dodgy at the minute, that we're going to have to traverse together and figure out. But there is a gut feel as to what's right and what's wrong. And the other thing, I would agree, everybody should try. Can I ask you do it using private things and don't put any of your documentation
100%.
online for anybody to read? And I'll take my cyber hat off now. But it's important to mention that.
That's good.
I think it's very interesting here, and I think, we're talking here inside the industry. One of the things that worries me is external regulation, and one of the things that really worries me is the emphasis that some politicians, elected politicians, put on artificial intelligence as though it is all the be-all and end-all. And we've heard about, massive increases in productivity, job losses. Sceptical about some of that as well. But there's certainly been, prominent government advisors who have suggested that artificial intelligence will replace everything that's going on, and who really, in my opinion, do not actually understand the real world of artificial intelligence. And that also worries me. I mean, we've seen, departments of education, for example, imposing their will, shall we say, on educationalists within the within the United Kingdom, around the world, where most educationalists would have actually said, no, please do not do this to us. And that is something that worries me tremendously within that if we're not very careful about it, if we don't bring elected politicians along with us, that policies will be imposed upon the assessment community, upon the educational community, with which we will have difficulty living with.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's the important message that Sara pointed out earlier around collaborating together as we move forward, that the power of being able to evidence that and support that as an industry is something that we are going to have to really drive forward. Good stuff. That was brilliant. Really interesting, fascinating discussions. Time absolutely flew by.